everyone. It's 5:30 on the dot, so we'll just get started. My name is Ibukun Timi, and I'm the founder of Tech With Us. I'm really excited that we're having our first live ever. I think we started the community just about last month, and I really wanted to do this to bring to life some of the things that we've been talking about throughout the month, talking about LinkedIn, and what better way to do it than to bring someone who has experience on the call. So it's really exciting to be doing this and to have you guys here to join to listen as well. As we go through the call, just put down your questions. There's a question and answer. There's a questions part on Instagram Live as well. So you can just click the speech bubble that has the question in it and leave your questions there so that we can attend to it towards the end of the call. We'll try to make this about an hour just so that I can give you guys back your Friday as well. I really do appreciate you joining me on a Friday evening. I know it's really precious time for everyone. So yeah, I guess just background story. We've been posting content, pretty much every week for the past couple of weeks on LinkedIn. And I think I posted this on my LinkedIn, and Lewis actually responded to or left a comment on the post. And I thought, you know what, I've worked with Lewis. It was great working with him at my current company, and he was able to help me hire like one of my best, hires so far since I've started like working and leading teams. And I was like, you know what, it would be a good idea to just reach out to him to see if he'll be willing to come and share some of the insights that recruiters look out for when they're looking for candidates on LinkedIn. And so thankfully he agreed to join me on this live. So I'll be bringing him up now so that we can start off this conversation. I'm going to be asking him questions just to, get to the meat of what are recruiters looking for and what can you guys actually do, just practical things that you can do to improve your experience or your opportunities on LinkedIn. So yeah, hi Lewis, how are you?
Hi everyone, I'm good. How are you? Okay.
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us on our first workshop. You're our first guest ever. So
Pleasure. It's a privilege.
So yeah, I'll just give you the chance to talk a bit about your background and what you currently do before we get started.
Yes. So thanks for the introduction. My name is Lewis. So I work in recruitment and have done for the last sort of 6-7 years. So I've worked internally, as you said, at obviously Wise, and then I've worked through agency as well for most of my time. Always tech related. So I cover mostly at the minute sort of cloud and data are probably the two main areas. And then my agency cover pretty much everything, technology, digital and data, as well as non-tech roles like engineering and sort of finance and commercial and whatnot. But yeah, all my background, last 7 years I've spent looking at CVs, looking at LinkedIn profiles and sort of trying to hire people.
All right, that's great to hear. So Luis and I recently worked together, I think like a few months back, and he helped me hire like one of my candidates who is like one of my stars on my team. So that's really why I wanted to have him here today. As you've heard, like we talk about, general career related things, but we're still like a tech community, encouraging people, teaching them how to get into tech. And so Luis's background is just perfect for this conversation. I guess my first question I wanted to ask before we get into this is when I started my career, nobody was really talking about LinkedIn. I had a friend who worked at an organization who told me about a role. I applied, I got the job. And I know even then people would literally just walk around and drop their CVs in offices, right? So why is LinkedIn now such a huge part of this conversation that we're having now?
I think it's because it's easier than sort of sending a CV. I mean, there's some companies that won't even look at a CV. They'll base the whole interview process on whether they're going to hire you from the initial point of seeing your LinkedIn profile or having a message from LinkedIn. So I think LinkedIn is kind of, your digital sort of CV now. There's still companies that will obviously want to see, a physical CV, but I think because it's so easy to apply to jobs, it's so easy to share, and it's basically same as all social media. It's sort of word of mouth, but obviously from a sort of a works perspective. But certainly in the last, like I said, I've worked in recruitment for 7 years. When I first started, LinkedIn was there, but it was quite niche. There was only certain types of people or certain types of roles or candidates, should I say, that would actually use LinkedIn to find a job. But certainly in the last, I'd say, maybe 3 years, most of my recruitment now, if I'm hiring for a job, it'll come from most likely LinkedIn. It's sort of overtaken all of the, in my opinion anyway, a lot of the job boards, a lot of the other sort of avenues to hire people. So yeah, I think it's really important to have a strong LinkedIn presence now, because that's what's going to get you a job at the end of the day.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I've had to like source for candidates as well, and my go-to is always LinkedIn. Like if I haven't known you previously, I'm definitely looking at your LinkedIn profile to see, you know, what you are about, right? I'm reaching out to you if you have an interesting one. I like what you said about like an online CV, right? But what I find is that the topic of CVs, LinkedIn, it's often very overwhelming. Like people say, use this template, do this, do that. Like there's so many things that people are asking, you know, us to do now when it comes to our CVs or our LinkedIn. What are like, give us like 3 top things, right, that as a recruiter you're looking out for, and you're saying, okay, yes, this is a candidate I want to speak to?
I think I mean, for LinkedIn, it's the content that you've got on there. I see so many LinkedIn profiles where, you know, they haven't maybe updated their job titles, or they've just got literally the place that they work. So I have to assume what they actually do every day. Or, you know, they've just got nothing else on there, or they've put open to work and they've said, you know, I'm open to work for a data engineering role in London. It's like, okay, but there's 100 different types of data engineering roles that you can do in London. So I think it's really important for your LinkedIn page specifically to have, you know, a solid sort of introduction, a bit about yourself. I want to know what you're like as a person. What do you like doing? Things that you do in your spare time. You know, if you're into tech, are you developing some code, you know, outside of your office hours? What types of things you've actually done, and then going down, you know, into a bit more granular detail, you know, fill out what you're doing in your current job, talk about projects, talk about things that you're proud of, and then there's other things, you know, like your recommendations and things like that, which maybe we'll touch on a bit later. But I think from LinkedIn, it's just really flushing out that profile, because if you've got, you know, a very sparse profile, it's going to be hard for me to find you. You know, if you've called yourself you know, I see some people and they'll call themselves a data ninja or something like that. You know, I'm not necessarily going to type that in to find you in the first place, especially if there's nothing else on your profile. From a CV standpoint, there's so many companies out there now that will offer you, you know, buy this template and it'll get you jobs, and this is what you should be doing, and it shouldn't be more than 3 pages, or some other people say it should be. I think the main thing with the CV is try and keep it as concise as possible. You know, I see a lot of CVs and a lot of people will put on there, you know, I've got good communication skills, or, you know, the standard sort of things. Just try and be, again, a bit more sort of, right, this is what I do. Put all the keywords in there in terms of the programming languages, or, you know, Terraform, DevOps, you know, whatever stuff you want to put in there, make sure that's in there. Because there are a lot of applicant tracking systems that will literally just search for buzzwords on your CV. And if you haven't got them, you won't show up on the top of the list, unfortunately. So again, good content. It doesn't have to be, you know, sort of 10 pages long. Ideally, as a recruiter, I'd probably, you know, if I'm being very honest, I'd probably look at the first page of your CV and sort of make, you know, my judgment from that. You know, if I can see on the personal profile, this is what I'm all about, this is what I enjoy doing, these are my hobbies, skill set, whether it be bullet points or a list, you know, I've got SQL, Python, I've worked on AWS, you know, I'm seeing all these words, and then I can see, you know, a couple of paragraphs for your current job and the projects you're working on. If I can see all of that on the front page, I'll be honest, the rest of it, yeah, you know, I probably will have a look through at previous roles, but if I can see all of that on the front page, immediately I'm thinking, you know, this is a strong candidate, a good fit. And the other third point is just a bit of personality. You know, putting stuff on there and sort of saying what you like, as I said, to do outside of work. If I can see that you're involved with a few different sort of communities and things on LinkedIn, or if you're just regularly getting involved, you know, with you know, within the data community, for example, and I see you liking and sharing posts and you know, sort of really getting involved in that world. Again, that's going to make you stand out, because I can actually see, okay, this person enjoys what they're doing. And it's just, I think content especially is what, you know, one of the most important things, because if you've just got a LinkedIn profile and it just sits there dormant, there's no point having it in the first place. You know, you've really got to sort of flush it out and make it personable to you as well.
I mean, I love the points that you've raised, right? And I want to touch on a few of them. So I've always thought about like content on LinkedIn as what you post, but never really like what you interact with, right? So it makes sense that if I come to your profile and I see that you're talking to other people in the community, you're contributing to other people's posts, and it shows like a genuine interest in what you do. So I think that's really a great point to put out, because people are, you know, intimidated about putting out content on what they learn. But if you're just like interacting with the right people, then, you know, that could get you noticed as well, right? And then I think the other thing I wanted to ask about is what you said about buzzwords, right? How do people kind of decide these are the, you know, sort of titles I should be putting up on my profile, or like these are the sort of like summaries or words I should have in my, maybe like my experience or my skills, or even just like the headline of your LinkedIn?
It can be difficult, especially in sort of DevOps and data, because you might call yourself a platform engineer, you might call yourself a DevOps engineer, you might call yourself a BI developer or a data analyst.
Yeah.
You know, there's literally hundreds of different job titles that you can put in there. What I'd always try and do, you know, if you're more DevOps focused, for example, so whether it be, you know, if you're maybe a platform engineer in your current role, I'd have your name, and then I'd say, you know, platform engineer at XYZ company, and then maybe something afterwards. So whether it be, you know, sort of DevOps and cloud, or, you know, observability, or, you know, something after the fact. So you state in your job title. So if I go on LinkedIn and I do a search and I'm purely searching on job titles and I type in DevOps, you're going to come up because you've put, you know, I'm doing DevOps, so I'm doing cloud or whatever. Or if I do specifically search for platform engineer, you're going to come up because you've said that I'm a platform engineer at XYZ company. So I try and stick to the standard names. I think on LinkedIn, when you actually go to add your job title, it'll come up and it'll actually show you which ones everyone searches for. When it doesn't show you any results, it means that not many people are searching for that. So if you put yourself as, I don't know, DevOps legend or something, you know, LinkedIn it won't come up with a recognized job title for that. And some people will still put it in and say they'll ignore the warning and still click save. You might come up, but you might come up on page 10 of 100. So I'm probably never going to get to page 10. I'm probably going to find somebody on page 1. So try and keep it simple, keep it to an actual job title. And then if you want to put stuff afterwards, feel free to do so, but just stick to a job title.
Yeah, I love all your like ninja and legend stuff. I'm sure you come across that quite a lot.
Hundreds,
But yeah, I mean, like, those are good tips, right? Like, I've never even thought of like just going with the standard LinkedIn suggestions, right? So it means people are searching for this. You basically want to make your profile as searchable as possible, right? So I guess it's almost like what, you know, when people talk about SEO and using keywords, just knowing what are the keywords that people would likely search for your role. The other thing I like to do as well is go through job ads and see what recruiters, you know, are putting out there, and then using those titles to like making sure that those titles or the words that they have in the job ads are also present on my LinkedIn, so that, you know, when they're looking for me, obviously they're typing those keywords that they care about and they can find me, right? So I think that's definitely a good tip. Right. So yeah, I want to kind of go into like the hiring market right now. Coming from like at Wise, you currently are just coming out of a slowly, I guess, coming out of a hiring freeze. And there's so many, you know, companies now that I think hiring are starting to open up for. So I'm seeing a lot of job ads. How would you say people should stand out? Because, you know, people have been waiting for so long for jobs to come up, meaning that the market is even more like booming and busy than ever. So how would you say people can stand out using their LinkedIn profiles, you know, to be able to attract some of these opportunities that are opening up now?
Again, I'd say if you've got a strong profile, start messaging people at the companies that you might be interested in. One of the things I say to like friends and things, when they're looking for new jobs, and I ask them, okay, have you got a list of 10 companies that you want to work at? And they're no. Like, well, okay, if they're not advertising at the moment, that's not necessarily a reason that they're not looking to hire. It's just they might not have published an advert, or they might not want to have 3,000 applications right now. So if you've got a list of a few companies that you really like the look of, I target sort of talent managers or HR, or just start following their page and interacting with some of their posts, because a lot of companies will post on their we're looking to hire a DevOps engineer or something. If you're following that page and you're seeing those updates, it's a perfect opportunity for you to be one front of the queue because you haven't got to wait for them to register the job, and then you put yourself through the portal and update your
Yeah.
CV and all this stuff. You can literally pop them a quick message and say, "Oh, I've seen your advertising. I'm actually really interested in joining your company for XYZ reason."
Yeah.
You can have a look at my profile and you see some of the things that I've worked on and projects I've covered. Happy to share my CV for you, if it's required.
Yeah.
A message like that will go a long way, because as the internal hiring team, it saves me, an infinite amount of time, because if that happens to me, I'm jumping for joy, because I'm actually
Yeah.
like, okay, somebody's used their initiative and they've approached me straight away. It means that I haven't got to sit here for the next 2 weeks reading through CVs and going through sort of all these applications.
Yeah.
It could literally be somebody that's just right place, right time.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that, and sort of being involved with the community as well. If you see, one of your old colleagues, or somebody that you've got a connection in common with, and they've started a new job at what looks like an interesting company, comment on it. Well done, congratulations, looks like a really good place to work. Again, it's just that visibility. I get what you coming back to what you were saying earlier about sort of being confident enough to post things on LinkedIn. I don't necessarily post a lot on LinkedIn, so I don't do any sort of real videos and things, but I will reply to comments and I'll put statuses up myself. A perfect example is me being on this call with you. It came off me replying to one of your posts.
Yeah, sure.
So it's just being involved and just sort of putting yourself out there a little bit. And a lot of it is right time, right place. But if you do see a company that's going through a big recruitment push, especially, as you said, now after the tech winter, or whatever you want to call it, there's a lot of companies that will be looking to hire. So having that good, strong presence, and sort of building your community, speaking to people in the space, congratulating people that get new jobs, following the companies you like the look of, all of that will just give you a better chance, rather than you sitting there waiting for them to publish a job on XYZ job board, or even on LinkedIn itself, and then you click in the apply button. If you do a bit of groundwork beforehand, there might be a chance that you might actually get an interview before they even register the job. So it's just about being a bit proactive on that.
Yeah, I mean, I really love your tips, because it's so easy to get stuck just like overthinking things. And I actually just, like what you said, right? You just responded to my post, and then I'm like, oh yeah, like I might as well just have Lewis since we've worked together. And I imagine that like there are other opportunities. I've gotten opportunities off of just like, replying a LinkedIn post, right? So it's definitely true. I think one of the things that's also interesting is seeing someone who works at a company that you'd like to work on, and like connecting with them, especially when they've looked at your profile. So in my last place of work, I had looked at someone's profile, and I'd actually decided not to like go with him. And then he just sent me a connection. I was like, okay, you know what? I might as well just speak to him. And he ended up being one of the people that we hired. So I think the main thing that I'm taking away from what you're saying is like, you don't really have to overthink it. Like, a little goes a long way. So just interact with people, be visible in the community, and you never know what, opportunities you might get, right? I think the other thing also I wanted to talk about is just like the etiquette, like what you mentioned in the beginning. Like, you reach out to the recruiter, you say, hi, I'm interested in this job, like these are my interest, this is what I've been doing. Like, that's sort of just like brief but very apt summary of your career journey, of your goals. Not like, because I'm sure like as a recruiter you probably get like random messages, right? So I think, what sort of things would you say people shouldn't do when they're reaching out to recruiters on LinkedIn?
Templates, big massive red cross. The LinkedIn they are good, but you have to put yourself in the recruiter or the internal talent person's shoes. They will literally get 100 of those a day. And it is hard because there's no personalization on it. I think LinkedIn's, I can't remember off the top of my head the exact wording they use, but it's basically, I've seen you hiring for a data engineering role, love to be considered for it, here's my CV. And it's the same one, and I sometimes will see that 200 times a day. It's hard for me to go through all of that because I can't tell anything from that message. I've got to then click on your CV, and I've just got to sit there and read a Word document for 5 minutes. It's really tricky. So the templates, definitely, avoid. I say avoid. You can still use them in some, if it's just a job that Yeah, you kind of like the look of, you might want to, throw your name in the ring, but you're not, desperate to land it. Then yeah,
Yeah.
just feel free to click that button and sort of see what comes of it. But certainly, if it's one of that list of top 10, definitely don't do that, because that's a sure, you're not going to get very far.
Yeah.
Putting a message across and saying, "Hi, Lewis." Firstly, get the spelling of my name right as well. That's a key one. A lot of people, yeah,
Definitely.
that rubs people up the wrong way sometimes. But yeah, make sure that the message is, clear, it's grammatically correct, and just make it sort of personable. It doesn't have to be 10 pages long. You don't even have to send your CV.
Yeah.
If I get a message and say, "Hi, Lewis, saw that you're looking at a data engineer. I would love to have a chat if you're free at some point." I'm more likely to respond to that than to a,
Here's
you know,
my CV.
10,000 word in mail and a CV attached to it.
Yeah.
Because one, if that shorter message, I'll probably click on your profile straight away. If I see your profile, I see some of the things I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
99% of the time I'm going to reply to you and say, "Yeah, here's my calendar. Let's book a time in to chat."
Yeah.
And then we can talk about the finer details, and I can get your CV at a later date. But let's have a conversation first, sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I love those tips, right? So keep it short and simple. And again, it ties back to having like a LinkedIn profile that represents you, right? Because if I click on your profile and I see that there's nothing there, it's kind of hard for me to take the conversation forward. But if I
Yeah.
click and you have, the details of what you're working on, your interests, your projects that you've worked on, like, of course, I'm willing to give it a go. Like sourcing on LinkedIn can be a lot. So I definitely see you on, like I hear you on just saying if someone comes and reaches out to me, then then I most likely would speak to that person because it makes my job easier. And interestingly, I think that that's not a thing that a lot of people do. Like they're not bold enough to reach out to recruiters. I guess I wanted to kind of just talk about maybe like the human side ish of like how to like interact with a recruiter or how to kind of present yourself, right? So instead of like getting into your head, like I'm trying to phrase this correctly, but as an interviewer, I'm nervous sometimes when I interview people, right?
Yeah.
But people just see us as, oh, like this is one hiring manager, one recruiter. But how do they kind of cross that boundary where they realize that, oh, it's a human I'm talking to and they should interact and relate with you in that manner?
I think it's what you mentioned earlier on about overthinking. You haven't got to be, all fancy and sort of posh with me. You haven't got to use big words. You haven't got to, come across as if you're wearing a full suit when you're messaging me. You can just be yourself. I'd much prefer a message saying, "Oh, hi, Lewis. Weather's been really warm this week, isn't it? Hope you're doing well. I'm looking for a new role. If you've got anything for me, bear me in mind." Because that's how you'd probably, if I went up to a stranger, that's probably how I talk to them.
Yeah.
If I was looking to have a relatively polite conversation, I wouldn't necessarily walk up to someone and go, "Hi, I'm available. I want 50 grand a year. Here's my CV." Nobody talks like that. So I think it is, stop overthinking it. There's nothing, everyone is obviously human at the end of the day. We want to have, a sort of a normal conversation, and just reaching out and sort of being a bit personable with it. If you see something, I don't know, say I've posted on LinkedIn, something about that. I posted something the other day about, tech winter and sort of the school holidays, and everything's really quiet at the moment. And I had quite a few messages come back to me. A lot of them were the automated ones about, I'm looking for a role. But there was a few people in there that messaged me and said, "Oh, I know it's crazy, isn't it? It's so quiet in the job market at the moment. I'm going to be starting to look over the next couple of months. Do you want to have a chat?"
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Yeah, I've got nothing for you. I haven't got a job for you right now because you're not in a market that I may be hiring in. But yeah, I'll have a chat with you. Here's my calendar. Feel free to book some time in. It's because I appreciated that more than, as I said, a long message and all really formal and sort of just language that you'd never use in a conversation. I think there's an element of professionalism that you have to have. You can't message me swearing or anything like that. But if you're just having a decent conversation and it's warm and welcoming, I think that goes so much further than being too over the top. And I can clearly tell that you've probably thought and overthought about that message in the last 3 hours before you sent it. So just keep it simple, I think, is the easiest way to round that off.
Yeah, I definitely love that. Like behind all of the job ads are just like people who are, wanting to hire the best person, right? Like I try to tell people as much as you're looking for a job, the team is desperately
Yeah,
sometimes looking for someone. Like sometimes I'm just like, I just need one person to be right for this job and I will
yeah.
love them forever, right? So we're also desperate to look for people. So like, just relax on both ends. You want a good job, we want a good candidate. So just take your time and don't overthink it, just go for it, I think I would say. Yeah, so that's great. I want us to kind of talk a bit about interviews, right? So coming into an interview, usually the first one is with a recruiter. Like, what do you think would help people stand out in that first interview? It's usually very short, 30 minutes. You have a very limited time to prove that you're worth going through the process, right? So what do you think candidates can do to make the best use of that call?
I think prepare something. If we've pre-booked the interview, I'll always try and give you, 24, 48, maybe even a week's notice that we're going to be having this call. So, if I'm speaking to you and, I've asked you, how did you hear about us, or why are you interested in this role? Any type of question like that, and you can give me a valid, sort of decent response, immediately, it's sort of green ticks, because it's like, okay, this person's taken it seriously. They've gone away and done some research on the role. If I've told them, if I'm working internally, they're obviously going to know that I'm hiring for that company, so they can research that company. Obviously, I'm in agency currently, so they might not necessarily know the end
Yeah.
company. But
Okay.
if they've read the job description and they can answer me and say, oh, well, actually, in the job ad, you said you were looking for somebody with SQL, Python, AWS, ETL experience, and I've done all of those things at my current company, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It shows that they've looked at that, taken it on board, and sort of given me a relatable answer,
Yeah.
rather than me asking you, okay, why are you looking for a new job? Oh, I want more money, or a standard answer that anybody can say, because
Yeah.
let's be honest, everybody would like more money. It's not necessarily a reason for you to leave your job. You might
Yeah.
want more hybrid working. You might want a more diverse environment.
Mm.
There's a million and one other reasons why you might be
Even
looking
like
for a new
yeah.
job. So preparation 100%. If I can just get an idea of, actually, this person cares, and has put some thought and an effort into this
Yeah.
conversation, it goes such a long way. Because on paper you could be, and you know this yourself, you could be incredible tech
Mm.
wise and tech stack, and it would look like you'd slot in tomorrow.
Yeah.
But if you haven't got the extra bits about actually working in that team and being able to work together,
Yeah.
it's going to be difficult for us to obviously place you in that role, or for you to get that position over somebody else who might be, I don't like to use the word weaker, but somebody else might be maybe less
Not as experienced.
experienced.
Yeah.
Yeah, they might get it just because they've shown more desire, and
Mm.
they've researched the company, and they've given more personal answers as to why they
Yeah.
want to join that company.
Yeah.
It sort of all comes back to having the reason behind it, not just saying, I want a new job, or I want more money, or I want to work for your company. It's like, yeah, okay, why
Yeah.
do you want to work for my
Yeah.
company?
Yeah.
Because everybody, there's 1,000 people that want to work for my company. Why should I pick you?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's definitely key.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's this like, standard answer where people say, I want to work for big tech, or I want to do this, I want to do that. Like those things that are great. But I think what's even more important is like personalizing it for yourself,
Yeah,
like I said. So if it's a company that you've used their tooling or you've used their products, you can say, oh, I used this and this is how it impacted me, right? Like
yeah,
I also want to kind of come into the interview, and it's sort of like an energy thing, right? So if you come in and you're bubbly and you can tell me why you want to work, like that vibe alone leaves me with a good memory of the interview, right? Rather than just coming and reading off a list of skills that you can
yeah,
do, right? So I think that that's definitely important. And also, when people say research the values of the company, it's not necessarily to, tell it back to me, but to sort of show me that our values align. So as you said, I'm looking for somewhere that's more diverse. I'm looking for somewhere that has this type of challenges. I know that at your skill, I'll be able to work with more data. Just things that basically show that you've read the job, you've thought
yeah,
about the role and how you would fit into the team, like you said, because that culture part is even more important than, getting someone who is a ninja, like you'd say, and then they come and they don't fit into the team. It creates more problems for us as leads or as recruiters. So yeah, I think think that's a great one to answer. The next question I would say is, I want you to give like a very brief, like when you ask the question, tell me about yourself, or do an introduction about yourself. What are you listening for, right? Because I know people go on and tell me like, I'm 25, I'm this, I'm that. And honestly, I don't want to know your age, right? So what are you looking for in that, basically, let's say 20-30 seconds that someone introduces themselves in an interview?
I suppose a sort of a brief background, like I said, when I first joined this call, I've worked in recruitment for 7 years, just a very brief, you haven't got to go into full detail about what you've done over those 7 years, because, that's going to take up the whole interview. But, if I'm speaking to a data engineer, I'm like, okay, tell me a bit about yourself. Okay, well, I've worked in data for 6-7 years, even since school, I've always been interested in, sort of mathematics and sort of numbers and problem solving. It's always been a sort of a passion of mine. I'm currently working at XYZ, doing this, that, and the other. I use AWS, blah, blah, blah. I want to develop my knowledge in this space and link it back to, the role that you're actually speaking to them about. And then, it's something that links to the company itself and maybe their values. So obviously with Wise, it could be, I was really interested in talking to you about Wise because I've used, Wise myself, and I've used it to send money back home or whatever the case may be. Because that then gives me an insight as to, okay, this is, a sort of a one, they can have that type of conversation and they can answer that question confidently without completely freezing, which some people do. They've given me a bit of backstory, if they've used the product, or they've mentioned, I used it while I was abroad. It opens the door to further conversation, because then you can say, okay, where were you? Or where's home, or whatever the case may be. It gives you that opportunity to have a naturally flowing conversation, but you're still on brand or on topic with, the sort of, whether it be the company or the tech stack or whatever the case is. So I think that answer, I wouldn't necessarily use it as a script, because it changes, obviously, from business to business and job to job. But, short and sweet, this is my background, this is what I'm doing, this is what I love to do outside of work. These are the tools that I'm using now. This is what I want to do going forward. This is why I'm glad I'm speaking to you, and why, I'm interested in your company. You can pretty much cover most of that in sort of 30 seconds to a minute. And then, you can delve further into the conversation.
I like what you said, like short and sweet, because you don't want to take up all of the conversation and they don't have the chance to get to ask you the questions that they really want to know about you. And even more importantly, like giving the conversation a sort of like flow, because when you have very interesting things that you've talked about your project, it just makes the conversation a bit more casual, and the recruiter is also not looking at, okay, I have another interview in the next like 15 minutes, let's get to it, right? So it's really good that you keep it short and sweet, keep it straight to the point. Practice what you want to say beforehand as well, just so that when you come in, you're a bit more relaxed and not too tense, right? Okay, so that's great. I think the other thing I would ask, like, it's a bit of a weird one, right? So LinkedIn is very I don't know, non-secretive. Like the moment you check someone's profile, they know, and the moment they check your profile, they know. So is it creepy to like go and look at your interviewers' profiles? Because I mean, I do that sometimes. I don't care if it's creepy. I'll still come and like do my best on the interview, but I know people are weary of that. But maybe it could be like a conversation starter if you kind of looked them up. So is there a right way to do it? Should you be approaching people before the interview? Should you be checking their profile, or should you just be like staying clear of their profiles?
I'd definitely say to do it, because there'll be, it's a few times this week actually where I've gone onto somebody's profile and I've realized I've worked with them, but like 6 years ago, and I've got the memory of a goldfish and I just completely forgot about that. So when you actually, if you're going to be interviewing somebody, you want to be impressing them, you want to leave a good impression. If you can show, you might look at their profile and see that they worked at a company, I don't know, you might have worked there, or you have a family member that's worked there, or it's just a company that, I don't know, might be local to you. There'll be some correlation, that you can pick up on, or even if it's just similar interests, because if they've got an equally flushed out LinkedIn page, I don't know, let's just say they've said on there that they play tennis in their spare time, and you're a tennis player. It gives you, something else to talk about. Because when you're having that conversation, then say, oh yeah, I'm really happy I'm speaking to you. by the way, I've seen that you play tennis, so do I. Immediately that recruiter hasn't heard that from the 99
Anyone?
other
Yeah.
interviews they've had today.
Yeah.
So from the very first minute of that conversation, as long as you're, in the right sort of skill set and sort of everything else compared to others, you're probably the front runner
Yeah.
just based off
That.
literally 30 seconds worth of prep looking at their profile.
Yeah.
So it's always worth doing. You are right. LinkedIn can sometimes, it is a bit like, I think so, it comes back to the overthink. I think some people get a bit scared to
Mm.
like look at their profile and they think like, oh my God, they're going to be think I'm weird. It's like we're recruiters and hiring managers. We understand,
Yeah.
if I questioned every person that looked at my profile, I wouldn't be able to do my job because I'd be spending all day asking all these people, what are you looking at my profile for?
Yeah.
So it's fine. It's normal. It's what everybody does. If you're really that fussed on it, you can view in private mode, but I
Mm.
wouldn't recommend it because I can't look at you back.
Oh,
So if I see that somebody's viewed my profile, if I can see their name and who it was, I might click on your profile and I might message you and say, "Oh, I saw you looking. Are you looking for a job?"
yeah.
If you view me in private mode,
Yeah.
I
You can
can't
go
click on
back.
you. I don't know who you are.
Yeah.
So it's a pointless sort of exercise, really. So yeah, I'd always recommend it. It's always worth doing because you can just pick up on little bits. Or at the very worst case scenario, if their profile is like a barren
Yeah.
wasteland, the worst case you can pick up on where they work, maybe where they've worked before.
Yeah.
Most people will put their education on there, so you can tell what school they went to or university.
Yeah.
And you'll also have in the top, they'll have their location. They might be a bit broad. So they might say London. London's a pretty big place. But again, that 6 points, the school, the location, the company, that 6 points that you can always have in your sort of arsenal to use and then say, oh, I see you went to X university, or,
Yeah.
oh, I see you're in London. I'm just based in XY, I'm in Oxford, or
Yeah.
you'll always have something by looking at their profile,
Yeah.
even as a worst case scenario, if it's, as I said, barren.
Yeah.
But usually, especially hiring managers, they'll usually have a bit more of a flushed out profile because, they have to use it a bit more regularly than others.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. On this side, like I don't really think like a recruiter or a hiring manager when it comes to checking for people's profiles, right? I just think, yeah, this person is going to see me like lurking around their profile and wonder what's this girl up to. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, I see the value. Definitely, you can reply me back. Reach out to me if you think my profile is interesting. And if anything, it just shows that you're coming to the interview prepared, or you're coming to the interview like caring about who you're speaking to. So I think
Yeah.
definitely that's a good one to have. Yeah, so I think I want to take you back a bit to like I forgot my train of thoughts. Okay, I want to talk a bit about like this period that we're in, right? Like there's layoffs, there's hiring freezes. Like what tips, do you want to give people sort of to navigate this season, especially if they're so desperately wanting to leave their jobs and feel stuck, right? With where they are now.
Yeah, it is frustrating. Especially if you're on the market at the moment. If you're in a job looking for a new one, there's worse places to be. At least you're in a job.
Yeah.
If you're out of a job, then yeah, it's a tough time right now. But I'd say just keep plugging away. Being on LinkedIn and sort of doing all this interaction and stuff and commenting on people's posts, it is time consuming. You do have to treat it as your job, really. Your job is finding a
Mm-hmm.
job. But it's not a quick fix. You're not gonna, unless you're extremely lucky. You're not gonna like one comment on LinkedIn and then get 6 job offers the next day.
Mm.
It's about sort of being involved and just getting involved with your community.
Yeah.
If you are on the market right now, as I say, going back to the previous points we've made, make sure your profile's set up. Make sure you've got a picture on there as well. That's another massive one. I can't remember the exact figures, but I went on a training course with LinkedIn not too long ago, and the response rate compared to somebody who hasn't got a picture to
Oh,
somebody who
wow.
has, it's like a 70% increase,
Wow.
which is mad. So it's even little things like that. So yeah, just get involved and sort of comment on people, reply to different sort of updates and posts and things. And
Mm.
if you're not if you're not comfortable enough to do it yourself yet, if you're not comfortable enough to do a video of yourself, or post what you did on the weekend, or whatever the case may be, start commenting on other people's that are doing
Yeah.
it. because most of the time I'll see it, or somebody else will see it, and that's all you need is just one person, and then it's a snowball effect because somebody else will see it, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I'd definitely say just sort of get involved. There was somebody I saw on LinkedIn. She was looking to move into data actually. So she started, and her profile was and the stuff she was posting was brilliant. She was out of work and she started posting just sort of like reports and things on data analytics and the market at the moment. All stuff that you can find on Google or ChatGPT. You can get loads of stuff that you can use as material. And she basically documented her journey from start to finish, from being out of work, changing the market, moving into data analysis. And I think she started, I think it was last month, she posted that she's landed a job. And it was purely just from posting on LinkedIn and saying, week 3 of me looking for a new job. It's tough out there at the minute, but, keep plugging away and sharing stuff from other companies. I think she shared like a few data science roles, which, she wasn't qualified. It wouldn't have been right for her, but she was sharing them, saying, some great opportunities here for anybody else in this space looking for a job. And now, she's got her first job in data. So, that sort of stuff is, it took her a long time. It took her, a couple of months, but she was posting really relevant stuff. She was getting involved with the community. She had a really strong profile. And eventually she got to where she wanted to be. So yeah, I think it's just, don't overthink it. Don't be shy. Just start getting involved and start following people. Recruiters are a good one to follow because recruiters will usually have a bunch of other candidates in their connections list. And they'll usually have a few companies and hiring managers and stuff in there as well. So if you're stuck and you've literally got nobody on your LinkedIn, start with some hiring managers. Look at some companies, look at some hiring managers in your market, and just start trying to connect with them. Look for some decent recruiters that have got some good recommendations, connect with them, and just start commenting and reaching out and messaging and liking and sharing and so on and so forth.
I mean, I love that. Like, I love people who are intentional about their career journeys, right? It just takes that little extra effort. Like, you can start from just commenting on people's posts until you build up your confidence to start talking about your own journey, right? And that could be really the difference between, getting a job or not getting a job. I think another thing is, interestingly, like, companies like people who are very, like, I guess, sort of vocal about what they do, especially when they have the skill to match, because companies want people who will speak on their behalf at like conferences or go out and evangelize about what they're doing, as much as possible. So that's definitely a plus that I would say that people should work on. I think we have like 2 questions in the chat. Like, I would read them and then just like have you answer them, right? And then we can just try to, I think, we're almost, I don't know how long we've been here, but like, we've been here for a while. So I want to keep it just like short and sweet, like we recommended as well. So the first person says, is it necessary to reach out to the company's recruiters for a role one is looking to apply for or already applied for while waiting for feedback or from an interview, or while waiting for feedback or an interview, actually?
Potentially. I mean, I'd suggest if you've already had an interview and you're waiting for feedback, you've likely got their email address. So, you could possibly just email them and sort of chase it up. If you're more comfortable popping a quick message on LinkedIn, again, I'm not, sort of opposed to that. If you want to pop me a message, then feel free to do so. So, there's no harm in chasing feedback and sort of asking for updates. Unfortunately, there are some horror stories with recruiters where you might apply for a job and you just never hear anything back again, and it's the same for companies as well, and it's just an unfortunate sort of byproduct of having to deal with 300 on applications. But I'd always say, if you've had a good relationship with that particular recruiter, pop them a message on LinkedIn and say, hi Lewis, just wanted to check in, any news? Again, it doesn't have to be super formal, just treat it as you would as if you're texting your friends, basically, or somebody at least I'd say there's no issue doing that. I'd like to think that if you're in process and you've already interviewed, me personally, I'd like to think that I definitely would have gone back to you at some point or another. I wouldn't have left you waiting for too long. I'd say the rule of thumb is 48 hours. I'd give it within the space of having an interview. That's when you can start expecting some news, and I think that's an acceptable time to leave it to start asking for an update to the role.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I agree. I find that people don't really, number one, they don't ask for the process of the interview, so they don't know what to expect. So you're kind of in limbo. Secondly, like, they don't go back to reach out to the recruiters. As you said, like, there are several reasons why a recruiter might not get back to you, but just showing, like, reaching out to them kind of puts you at top of mind, them as well. I think I had actually something similar had happened to me where I had gone through the entire stage of an interview process and hadn't heard back. Eventually, I kind of reached out to my interviewers and the recruiter as well, and they ended up saying, "Oh yeah, well, sorry we didn't get back to you, but we went for an internal candidate, but we can have you do one more interview for another role, and we're happy to have you because you did well on the other interview." So I ended up not taking that role and coming to Wise instead. But imagine if I didn't have the other option and I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, I would interview with you," and just that action of reaching out to the recruiter, reaching out to the interviewers, was what made the difference for me. So I definitely encourage it. Reach out to them, but also make sure that you're aware of the process, just so that you're not getting too ahead of yourself, and okay, I'm expecting they'll get back to me next week, so I don't have to reach out to them before then. The second question is, what can you do in a case where recruiters have clogged LinkedIn messages and may not even see your message?
Again, you could potentially follow up. I think that comes back to looking at what you've sent in the first place. Have you used one of those templates? If the answer is yes to that, they've probably already had 300 of them, so send something different. Send another message and say, "Oh, appreciate you probably had hundreds of applications for this, make a joke, best of luck going through all of those before the weekend. I just wanted to follow up because I'm really keen. Be great to have a chat. Again, something just different, something that the recruiter isn't seeing all day, every single day. So I think the first thing to do is look at, okay, what did I send the first time? And then, I've got no issues with somebody following up. It might have just been a simple case of there's only 8, 9, 10 hours of a working day. If a recruiter's posted a role, depending on what the role is, they might have had 100, 200 applications. And we're also not counting the people that the recruiter already knows himself or herself that they've tried contacting directly. Because a lot of the time it'll be, I don't know, maybe somebody I spoke to 6 months ago and I see a job that somebody needs to hire and I'm like, Jeff might still be on the market. I'm going to call Jeff first. So there could be 1,000,001 reasons. I'll be honest, it could just be a really lazy recruiter. It could be, the fact that they're not a very good recruiter. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. It is sometimes a level of incompetence. But if you're working with a good recruiter, and you can tell if you're working with a good recruiter because they are getting back to you, they're giving you updates. You can tell if you're working with a good company because they'll lay out the interview process, so you're not sitting around nervous and anxious about whether you've got the job or not. You can tell all of these things about the process and sort of how you've been treated throughout that process. So, if you're working with a good recruiter, they'll always give you an update. Most of my candidates, if I've got somebody that's interviewing on, a Friday, for example, I had somebody interview for me today on a Friday at 3:30. I told them before that interview, look, it's unlikely we're going to get feedback today because by the time you're out, it's going to be 4:30. And let's be honest, everyone goes home at 4:30, 5 o'clock. So I'm probably not going to get feedback for you till Monday or Tuesday. If you're working with somebody, who's good at what they do and sort of is giving you some respect and sort of vice versa, they'll keep you up to date anyway. But I'd certainly say, chase them up if you need to. If you feel that you're a really good fit for the role and you feel like you've sent them a good message, then 100% pop them another one and say, by the way, still looking, happy to have a chat. I could speak next week or something if you're free.
Yeah, all right, that's great. I think like my main takeaway from this chat is like there's no shame in the game. Like, put yourself out there, be as bold as possible, especially when you have a belief in your skills, right? Like how much work you've put into getting to where you are in your career. So there's no reason why, you shouldn't there's no can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no reason why you shouldn't be, putting yourself out there, right? And I like what you said as well in terms of just thinking of the fact that, like, sometimes you're just dealing with a recruiter that's, not doing their job really well, or a hiring manager that even maybe has another, has other priorities. I think there is a boundary of just like, knowing that for someone to kind of put out a role and have started interacting with you, there's some level of professionalism you can sort of in quote like demand from them. So you following up is actually not a bad thing. Like, it's their work to actually get back to you. So don't see it as you're disturbing them or anything. And the other thing I also picked as well is also acknowledging that there are work hours, right? So I don't treat my LinkedIn as my like work tool really, because it's more of like my personal thing, right? So if you actually message me, I might respond to you late in the day, but a recruiter, that's their day to day, they've been looking at LinkedIn all day. So just knowing that, okay, I message this person at 4 p.m., they're probably going to get back to me tomorrow. Yeah. I think we have one more question. He said, as a follow-up, aside a bad profile page, what are the things you can do to hurt your LinkedIn profile rank? Oh, that's a good question.
I think it's, not having the sort of keyword, and I don't like saying the keywords, but unfortunately it's just the way it is sometimes. Even LinkedIn, obviously a lot of people might, well, they probably do realize, but there's LinkedIn and then there's LinkedIn Recruiter.
Yes.
So it's what the hiring team will use, which is a completely different tool to what the general public would see as LinkedIn. If you haven't got certain words on there, just LinkedIn Recruiter just won't show you. So not having those, and they don't even need to be. I'd always try and cover all bases. So, for example, if I'm searching for somebody on LinkedIn, you can search via keywords. So I can search your whole profile for AWS, for example, or I can search for skills, and I can search just your skills for AWS. Now, if you've got them in keywords, but you haven't put them as a skill listing, or sorry, the other way around. Say you haven't got it in any keywords, but you've got it as skills. I might not necessarily find you if I'm not doing that search. Again, most recruiters, or at least the good ones, they'll cover all bases to make sure that they find that candidate. However, I don't know, they might have slipped or forgot to press the button, or they might have clicked X by mistake. I don't know, it could be a billion reasons. But just having those, every single section that you see on LinkedIn that allows you to put something in there, just put something in there. In the intro part, put AWS, put ETL, put Python, put stuff that you're interested in, and down to your skills as well. Get people to endorse those skills. Not a huge issue if they don't, but again, it just looks better. If I see two profiles and one of them's got Python with 0 endorsements and one's got Python with 20, which one am I going to be more interested or intrigued to talk to? It's going to be the one with 20. So every little thing that LinkedIn allows you to do, just do it. Just fill it in, because it'll take you 5 minutes. It's not, it's not a laborious task. It's not going to take you long. It's 5 minutes of your time to fill it out, and then you just leave it sitting there, and people will come to you. There's no other tool that will let you do that. It's you get back what you put into it at the end of the day. So I'd say, the bad sides would be not using everything that is there and available to you. And just trying to do as much as you can and fill it out. Even if you feel like you're repeating yourself, just put it in there. Nobody's going to judge you. There's no such thing as too much information on LinkedIn. It only lets you put a certain amount on there anyway. So, just fill in as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that that's something that we didn't really touch on, right? Like that skills aspect. So I think LinkedIn lets you put up to 50 skills, like fill them up as much as possible, just so that the idea is making your profile as searchable as possible, as findable as possible. And when people find your profile, then making sure that they have something to accurately judge you. Like, I think there's another thing that I find interesting with LinkedIn as well, and what helped me tune my profile. So when people search for you, LinkedIn tells you what terms they're searching for. So when I noticed that people were searching for junior engineer, intern, and I'm like, well, I have X number of experience. I'm obviously not an intern. I started like tweaking the keywords and seeing what LinkedIn was telling me. So that way I knew when people started searching like engineering lead, instructor, because I'm a LinkedIn, instructor, I knew that, okay, I have people, the right audience looking at my profile, and if I needed any opportunities, they would find me for what I want. So that's something that helped me when I was looking at my LinkedIn profiles. I guess there's another question in the chat as well. So someone is saying, how do you optimize your LinkedIn if you're looking to make a career switch?
So it would just be getting involved with the new community. So say, for example, you're going from, I don't know, an accountant to an analyst, like a pricing analyst role, because, you might have touched on similar sort of areas and sort of different tools or whatever. Again, it would be getting involved with, those types of people. So start finding, pricing analysts or data analysts and start connecting with them. They don't necessarily have to be, CEOs of McDonald's or something as a multinational company, but it could be somebody in your local area. It could be a friend of a friend. It could be somebody that you've heard of. Look at a company that you'd be quite interested in because they hire people in this new area that you want to go down. Start connecting with a couple of them. Maybe connect with a couple of the developers because they're going to be posting. Especially if they're seasoned developers. You'd like to think if they're quite active on LinkedIn, they're going to be posting a lot of stuff about. If you want to go into Python development, they're going to be posting a lot of stuff to do with Python. And start liking some of their posts. If they're posting bits of code or something, or they're talking about their GitHub, again, comment on it, saying, "Oh, that's really interesting. I'm looking to get involved in this. It's just really cool stuff you're doing." Just a simple comment on that, and one of the the hiring team and that person's company, they might be hiring for junior developers in 6 months, and they could look at it and go, "Oh,
this person."
Dave knows somebody, and then it can literally come from that. So again, if you're changing, I think it's more important, if you change your market because you haven't got the educational, or sort of stuff that you've done in the past. You haven't got any of that, so you're completely fresh slate. So from that point of view, I think it's even more important to be liking, commenting, following these pages, updating your profile to say, putting in the sort of in the introduction part, you can put, right, this is my background, this is what I've been doing, and then another paragraph, I'm looking to move into XYZ world and the reasons behind it. So yeah, I think especially if you move in to changing or switching career paths, whatever you want to call it, I think it's even more important to make sure that your target audience is the right target audience, because there's no point being engaged with, I don't know, finance analysts if you want to become a Python developer. You've got to change, and it's not to say that you have to delete everyone off your LinkedIn. You don't have to do that, but just start being more involved in that new space.
Yeah. I love that, definitely. I think I want to kind of come back to something like the example you gave of the girl who was also posting her journey, right? So if you're learning things already, like there's no harm in just taking that extra step to show that you're learning it, you're taking certifications, you're putting it on your profile. Just so that people know that you have a genuine interest. Again, there's so many people like you who want to switch careers, who want to, change jobs. So what makes you stand out is really what you should be thinking about and having on your profile. And I like that, summary of like, I'm from a marketing background and I now want to be a finance analyst, right? And why? Because you're being upfront with the person. Like the person is not coming to your profile and saying, oh, this person is an analyst, and then going down and seeing that you don't have any, background, right? But they say upfront that this is what I'm, looking to do now, and probably this is why you're finding my profile, and I can kind of, I can come to you on that level already. We already have an understanding that we can go off of. Somebody else asked a similar question in the chat as well, so I think we've answered that. But there was one question I wanted to, I think there's one other question I wanted us to touch on as well. So what of students who are looking for part-time internships or placements to integrate into tech?
Again, I'd maybe go look on LinkedIn and start searching for, internships. A lot of the companies will put hashtag internships or hashtag graduates or, juniors or whatever the case may be. So again, start sort of searching for that. If you can latch on to somebody, who's just landed a job as an intern, amazing, because that company hires people because you've seen them hire this person. So start going on there and searching. It's a bit hit and miss sometimes because you are relying on people putting that hashtag on that post, and it can sometimes be a bit tricky filtering it down by location. If you're being ultra specific, like you only want to be an intern in Cambridge, you might there might only be 1 or 2 posts about that a month. So you might have to start being a bit broader and just looking at anything in the UK, and start liking and commenting on these posts about interns, even if it's a company you've got absolutely zero interest in joining. Just by liking that, it sort of links your name to interns or internships or graduates, and LinkedIn, it is quite clever, and it'll show you relatable things to it. Yeah, it'll pick up on that and go, okay, she likes to look at internships. Use a bunch more. Because it'll learn from what you're doing. So again, it's just sort of getting involved in that area, not just putting it on your profile and hope, especially if you're looking at internships, because from a recruiter, that's like the worst nightmare, because if you go on LinkedIn and did a search for interns or graduate level data engineer, there'll literally be about 3 million. It's if you're relying on me picking you out, it's a needle in a haystack. I might find you, I might not. Even if you've got an amazing profile. Unfortunately, for a lot of companies at that level of role, it's about quantity rather than quality. They just want to get people in the door and sort of get people on seats, basically. So again, coming back to being involved in that, start liking, sharing, commenting. LinkedIn will start putting more of that in front of you. And at some point or another, you might see a really interesting company post, in September next year, we're going to be going through a grad scheme. Yeah, lovely. Follow that company straight away. Start connecting with people at that company. Start messaging people at that company. Say, I'm an intern. I want to work for you. It sounds simple. I appreciate it's not always the case, and it makes it sound as if you're going to get a job next week. That's not, unfortunately, especially in this current market, it's not always what happens. But it'll give you 1,000% better chance of getting a job than somebody who's got just a LinkedIn profile just sitting there gathering dust, and then hoping somebody's going to message them, because the likelihood is I'm not.
I like this last question, and we'll take this last question before we go, which is what's the best way to handle recruiter messages, especially when you're not interested in the role?
That one's a trigger. Please don't ignore it. I'd appreciate that. Look, I start seeing it more and more now, actually, and I quite welcome it, where they'll decline the message, and they'll give me a reason why. They'll say, look, I'm not really looking right now, Lewis, but happy to connect with you, and maybe who knows, in the future we might catch each other at the right time. That will go a lot further than if you just ignore me, or if you write some snarky comment back, or you be unprofessional, because I'm a big sort of, you don't want to necessarily burn bridges. If you're dealing with a recruiter, that recruiter might end up being a talent manager at your dream company. And you don't want anything to affect that further on the line. So I think it's always good just to be, civil, professional. Thanks very much for your interest, Lewis. Best of luck, but I'm not on the market right now, but let's connect. And, if the situation changes, we'll have a chat again in the future. That to me will go a million miles further, and I will connect that person. And then if a job comes up in 6 months or a year, I might pop you a message and say, hi, how's things? I've got this job now. Any chance you might be looking now? And that happens so often now, from the works. Obviously, I've done this for like 6 or 7 years. So there's people I'll message on my LinkedIn that I've spoken to 2 years ago, and I'll go up, hi, Gary, how's things at XYZ? I've got a job. Do you want to have a chat? And you'll be like, let's have a chat. That, it'll serve you in the long run, just by, how long does it take to send a reply and type that one line, maybe 5 seconds? It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to take too much of your time, and you never know when that person might call you in 6 months or a year with an absolute amazing, incredible job that you never thought you could get. So it's always worth keeping people on your good side is my advice.
I definitely agree. Like, I think this even applies to when you've interviewed and don't end up taking the offer. Just like not burning those bridges, because you never know. I had someone who I interviewed years ago kind of reach out to me when I posted a new role, and I was open to talking to them because we had ended on a good note, and I knew that I have a good idea of how this person interviews. how we interacted in the last one, and I can say if they wanted to come on to my new team, I would be very open to it, right? So definitely don't burn bridges, just be professional and say why. And I always say to recruiters, like, I'm currently not looking, but if that changes, I can let you know, we can just connect, right? Very simple. It's a lot, but like, I just take some time out and just do all of them at once, just so that, I'm getting through them as quickly as possible and, in a short time. But I know that they appreciate it, and usually they'll connect with me, and, who knows when next I would want to, work at a company that they're currently working at. So definitely don't burn bridges and be professional. So we've just gotten over an hour, and I think this has been a really, really great conversation. I wanted to just like ask, do you have anything, that are you hiring for any roles that you want to talk about, or is there anything that you want to talk about personally?
Not personally. I mean, in terms of hiring, there's, like I said to you at the beginning of the call, so I cover sort of data, cloud, and a couple of other things. There's a few sort of data engineering positions and whatnot I'm hiring for at the moment. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you search for Lewis Allen on LinkedIn, I'll pop up from Yoke Recruitment. Feel free to pop me a connection request. Feel free to take on board some of the tips that I just told you and send me a nice message. It'll be greatly appreciated. And I'll always post jobs. Anytime I'm hiring, it'll always go up on LinkedIn first. So you'll see the jobs that I'm posting. If any of them look interesting, just pop me a message and reach out, and we can get a call booked in.
Yeah, that's great. I guess from my end, thank you guys so much for joining this live. I'm really, really appreciative that you took your time to listen to us. We'll definitely be posting the recording of the live on our page as well, so you can follow up there. And if you're not following Tech With Us, definitely do, because we have more and more things like this in store for you guys. So it was really nice to meet every one of you. Thank you for the insightful questions and comments, and thank you so much, Louis, for your time as well. I really, really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you asking me to come on. I really enjoyed. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you so much, and I'll catch up with you guys on Instagram. Bye.
Bye.